Committee meeting Wednesday, November the 15th. Welcome to all that are here. Thank you for taking your time out to spend some time with us this morning. We don't have anyone that signed up for virtual, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we don't have to read our we don't have to read our confirmation of member participation. Do we have a quorum?
We do. I can call the roll now. Chesterfield County,
Here.
Vice Chair Carroll. Henrico County, Mr. Thornton.
Here.
New Kent County, Chair Page.
Here.
Powhatan County, Mr. Byerly. City of Richmond, Ms. Nye. Here. Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Okay. Item 2 is consideration of amendments to the action meeting agenda.
Madam Chair. One slight change in the requested action under new business, item 1. The language that is requested in the agenda packet is for assistance in planning for bonding capacity, and that's a little bit redundant to what we are contracted with PFM to do. So I would like to revise slightly the language in the agenda to read: motion to recommend Finance Director's Working Group, including VDOT, be asked to assist the Executive Director in preparing for bonding as needed. So just a slight adjustment, but I wanted to be clear on what the Finance Director's Working Group is asked to do.
Okay. Are there any more changes?
That's a question of the
Amendment.
change, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
So what is the difference between the language that says meet to advise or ask to assist? They're kind of the same.
I wanted to provide more flexibility for the Finance Director's Working Group, rather than just have the option to have a meeting to be able to communicate via email or phone calls or
Makes sense to me.
other methods.
All right, so basically strike the word meet, I get it.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion to approve the change to the agenda.
Motion's been made. Do we get a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Moving on to number 3, approval of the September 7th meeting minutes.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Abstain.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would just, I'm gonna support this, but I would like to note in the record that I wasn't here for the meeting, but have been told that the meeting minutes are accurate by the mayor.
Okay, so noted.
Thank you.
Number 4 is
Madam Chair, I think we need to vote on it.
oh, okay. Get the changes. So we have one change. Do we have a second?
We did. I made the motion to approve. Ms. Thornton seconded.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposition? All righty. Now we can move on to number 4, which is our open public comment period. Do we
Madam
have
Chair, we've had no requests to speak.
no requests? All right. So number 5 is our chairman's report. Only thing I have is, and Chair doesn't even know this, but you may be getting notices. I don't believe in having meetings just to have meetings. And so if we have meetings with no pressing business to attend, then you may get a cancellation for a meeting. And so that's the only change that I have. Sorry, I'm just telling you, but anyway.
Got it.
I know we got December coming up and a lot of things going on, and then weather and all of that, so. Number 6, activities report.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll take 6A, which is your financial activities and investment reports, starting on page 7 through 9 of the agenda packet is your the monthly updated tax collections and allocations for this current fiscal year. I will note as each month to pay attention to the lifetime to date on the right hand column. Showing the receipt of taxes from sales and use, as well as local fuels. And this will, I put a bookmark on those numbers. That'll come into play later on this morning when we talk about bonding capacity and what revenues are going into that calculation. You will also see the local distributions to each of the 9 jurisdictions, including the addition of the payments to GRTC and the regional fund. The investment report through September of 2023 is on page 8 and 9. You can see, as we've noted in previous meetings, the FY24 cumulative interest earnings is doing much better than previous fiscal years, and Chesterfield County in cooperation with staff is on top of reinvestment of funds when available, and we're working closely with them to make sure that those funds are put to good use. So I'd be happy to take any questions. That's a fairly straightforward report on the financial activities.
Do you have any questions? So we have, moving on to TAC activities report, Ms. Clark.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Tyrona Moore Clark here, City of Richmond, TAC Chair. I'll be updating you from our Technical Advisory Committee meeting held on Monday, November the 13th. During that meeting, TAC did take action or recommended that November 22nd, by the close of business, that localities should have provided the executive director with the wish list. This is our wish list or candidate groups of projects that localities would like to submit in consideration for the exercise that the finance work directors group will be assisting Chet with. So really seeing short, medium, long-term needs. I know Chesterfield submitted it in that, and I think others may follow. And these are, again, like 0 to 5 years of projects that the locality sees that has a regional significance, and really just helping our financial advisors and Chet really begin to see what are the needs of the localities. Again, November 22nd is when your member localities need to have those project wish lists. And those should fit within the criteria of the CVTA regional eligibility. Second, during that meeting, we talked about the Fall Line Trail. There, we had a discussion about having the flexibility in our design guidelines as far as being able to right-size structures, bridges in the design. These are a lot of the things that VDOT want to have the flexibility not to tie in very high cost estimates when administering the projects. And so we are looking at that through the design build process, as well as how that can relate to the design guidelines. We did have some feedback from New Kent on really, again, allowing for the design to be really somewhat flexible when it comes to a locality. Of course, we know the City of Richmond, being an urban footprint, really is going to have some different design than design like allotment, such as some areas that may be 10 feet versus others that can meet the standard of 11 or 14 feet that we're seeking. So really just allowing that flexibility to be there. And then finally, we talked about CVTA Regional Round 3. So this is the most recent applications that the localities submitted. Right now, in the roadmap of that, we are in the stage of the third-party estimate validation and the review of that. We hope to The executive director hopes to have that completed before December. And then we're looking for the January consideration for TAC of a proposed list to come to the body. And if we can't meet the January deadline, you know, I've always been truthful, it may be February, but we are shooting for January with the backdrop of February if necessary. And we are trying to do this to align with any smart scale pre-apps and things like that that may need to occur based on the outcome of that funding scenario. With that, that concludes the TAP report.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions?
Madam Chair, I do have a comment, dual comment. I appreciate Ms. Clark for the excellent report she's given, but she mentioned the Fall Line Trail. It is my opinion that we need to make sure that the majority of the citizens know what the terminology is and how it is identified. Now, we are kind of sophisticated around this table. We know what we're talking about. But I don't know whether the average citizen who's trying to just make it from week to week, month to month, really knows. And I think it's important for as many citizens as we can to know what the Fall Line Trail is. So my suggestion here is let's make sure we go back and somehow put it in the media again. I know we have done it once, but we need to make sure we keep putting that before the people so that most people will know what these terms are that we are using. And I think that has been our shortcoming. We assume that everybody knows what X and X is, but they may not. And no matter how well we give reports to each of us, we always want to try to make sure that the average citizen, the one who can't go to a typical meeting, will know what is that term they're using. So I'm just suggesting that we go back and identify some media where we can make sure that everybody say, okay, I have a better understanding of what the Fall Line Trail is. And I think that that would be helpful for this august group and others.
Madam Chair,
Sir.
okay, just to add to that, interestingly enough, when over the last couple of months, having conversations with people in the community, it's interesting at actually how many people actually know what the Fall Line Trail is, are excited about it. But I think what we need to look at from a finance committee side, quite frankly, is a different way to reach the community, because I don't think that our standard media practices are working. What I would suggest is for us to actually direct staff to get some prices for us. For example, for a regional text message to go out to the entire region with an informational link to the Fall Line Trail. I found this to be very effective in reaching voters to basically get information to them. So they would get it and be able to click on the link to the Fall Line in their phone and go right to the information. And I think from a regional standpoint, you know, I don't know how much it would cost, that's what we have to look at, but you're gonna hit everybody's cell phone. And everybody we know has a cell phone, right? Even the kids. And so for a one-time cost, we can blast it to the entire region, to everybody's phone. They could click on the link and it could take them right to the information about the Fall Line Trail. And I do believe this is an effective way to get the message out to our people in the community, far beyond doing a radio show or doing a report in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, or even doing an interview on Channel 6 News. And then once it's in their phone, they have it forever and they can go back and click on it as well. So I think, I don't know what it would cost. I know what it costs for me to send a text message out, but I do think it's worth us looking at from a one-time expense. If we really want to talk about pushing it out to the entire Richmond market, that's a way to do it. Just something to consider, that we could get staff to just come back to us to the finance committee with some estimates on what that would cost. But just food for thought.
Madam Chair, question. Has there been any standard communication that's been shared with the different localities that then each locality shares out to the other communications tools?
Yes, and,
Okay.
to answer that question for you, Madam Chair, and actually, I went to every single Board of Supervisors meeting regionally. Chet and I did a presentation in front of Richmond City Council, too, as well, on what the CVTA has been doing, and included in that presentation that the staff put together, a great informational piece on the Fall Line Trail. And so we have repeatedly pushed it out for the last 2 years.
And I was just asking that question because my office, just like I'm sure everybody around this table, like, we have a standard newsletter, so if there's something I could just drop in there, that
Well, I
makes
think
it
it's-
easy for me.
Oh, I think it's important too, yeah.
Absolutely.
And Madam Chair, one other idea coming from a retired educator. I don't know whether or not we have put as much information in the schools to kind of help us with getting the word out too. Not from the financial part, but just, kids talking about Fall Line Trail. They usually can help educate parents sometimes,
Absolutely.
That's very true. Good point.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that one of the things that I've found is charming, and I know Plan RVA already has it, but we could branch off of it with the active transportation. So I think when you use that umbrella, and then especially with the schools or wherever we're trying to put that message, we then follow through, because then you get the pedestrian safety, you get the bicycle safety, and then you get the, shared use safety. So I think that, check using some of what you already developed with the active transportation could help to be, whether that be the landing page for the text message, but I think really getting it tying it back to transportation is important. But really emphasizing that, I do it when I go to universities and talk about it with health programs. So again, it has a lot of benefits. And of course, in our presentation, we've used what Plan RVA states are the benefits of active transportation. So really kind of emphasizing that, I think, will be a good push for the Fall Line Trail.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, one other thought. I think to Mr. Carroll's point about the role of the Finance Committee, one thing that we haven't done is share a lot of information about the remaining bill. What's the dollar amount that we still need to raise to complete the trail? I think that would be a great thing for the CVTA to take the lead on, since we contributed so much to get it started. So we could certainly work on that as well as part of that messaging.
Okay, we have several different suggestions that we're gonna work on and get back with you on. Yeah, making sure you write some down. So anyway, we have several different suggestions that we're gonna work on and bring it back to our next meeting. All right? And thank you for your input. Okay. Yeah, we talked about number 1 on the new business. Number 2 is our credit assessment overview.
Actually, if it's okay, Madam Chair, I'd like to come back to number 1.
Number 1, okay.
I wanted to give a general update on the round 3 regional projects cycle. As you know, we've gone through 2 rounds already, and I believe the latest numbers are about $500 million have been distributed to 125 projects or so through the first 2 rounds of regional funding. Actually, that's a big number. That's including the local distributions as well. But we are in round 3, where we are considering a slate of, I believe it's around 36 project applications. And as Chair Clark mentioned, we are in the middle of validating cost estimates and working through with each jurisdiction their applications for regional projects. And we expect to have probably the January, February timeframe, an item back to the full authority for consideration for round 3 approvals. But I wanted to share this morning kind of an update on where we are at this point in time. There's a number of handouts on the larger pages in the agenda. And I'll just walk through those and feel free to ask questions as I move through it. The first one on page 10 and 11 is something that you have seen before. This is the action that was taken in December of 2022 by the full authority to approve our allocations plan following round 2 of the regional project awards. So we will have another action very similar to this after round 3 is approved. But this is essentially, this locks in the funding that has been committed by the CVTA previously according to fiscal year. So you can see fiscal year 21 through 28 across the top. And the funding for each of the approved regional projects is split out in that regard. On the right-hand side, you can see the total CVTA dollars that have gone to each project, the balance to complete, and any notes that staff has made as we move through this process. So this is really, as we look at milestones for the CVTA, this is one of those that we are using to track where we have made commitments previously. And it helps to then think about what our capability is moving forward. So this is kind of a first look at what we have, what the CVTA has previously committed to. The next item, and we're kind of walking forward in time here, is on page 12. And this is something that staff has put together to identify, according to our current funding model, which is a pay-go model. We're only going to spend the money that is in the bank at the time. These are the funds that are available from FY23 through FY30, based on the latest VDOT estimate which was December of last year. Any balance entry that we have identified, and then the amounts of funding that were allocated in previous rounds. So if you look, I think the place to highlight here is the bottom right. You can see total minus reserve. Essentially, the 183 million is what we can expect to have available to cover all of these fiscal years, any new projects that are identified. That 183 is the projected available funds to cover any new costs outside of everything that you just saw in the previous table. So all of our previous commitments, all of our previous allocations, those funds are locked in. And the 183 is what we can expect to have available using our current model for the years moving into the future. I think one thing to note, we have talked about it, I believe, at the Finance Committee, as well as the authority, about draft changes to our financial policies and procedures that would move to set up a more committed reserve of funds that will be available to offset costs for bonding, oversight of project costs, escalations, those kinds of things. There has been no action yet taken on that amendment to the financial policies and procedures. But when you see the 183, it's labeled total minus reserve. That's what it's referencing. If the financial policies were updated to establish that reserve, the 183 would be what would be left available for commitment for allocation after that reserve is established. So sound financial practice to establish the reserve, and I expect that we will have that back for your consideration, possibly as we consider these the bonding options available to the authority. Any questions on that? This is going to be updated, obviously, as we move forward in time when we have better information. I did mention that the VDOT estimate was from December of last year. This has happened every December. Towards the end of the month, we get a new estimate from VDOT. We expect the same to happen next month. So we'll be able to update all of our data based on the best available information towards the end of this calendar year. The last item to share with you is starting on page 13, and it goes through page 27. basically the rest of the 11 by 17 documents. This is, TAC has been working on this document, and it's a great resource. This is essentially our spend down plans is what TAC's reference has been. And when we talk about spend down plans, these are all of the projects for each jurisdiction that have been committed and the expected schedule from FY23 quarterly, FY23 through FY29, shared back by each member jurisdiction on when funds are expected to be used for each of the projects that have received regional funds. So on page 13 is kind of the summary page. So you can see across the top all the different types of projects, starting with Ashland through Charles City, Chesterfield, all the way through the city of Richmond. We also have some unique columns in here. There's a Powhatan-Goochland, which was created to capture the Route 288 hard shoulder running project. That's multi-jurisdictional. We have some region-wide projects, which include Fall Line Trail, and I believe there may be one or two other projects in there. And then, so all of those projects are identified in the summary page here, according to the fiscal year. If you leave further back, this is where it goes into a individual page for each jurisdiction, starting with Ashland, and the particular project or projects that have been given regional funds by the CVTA. So you can see Ashland has Vaughan Road Overpass. There is a commitment of funds, but Ashland is still seeking the remainder of necessary funds to complete the need for that Vaughan Road Overpass project. That's why you don't see any dollars listed moving down the page. Moving forward, if you look at, say, Chesterfield, for example, you can see the funds committed for 288 northbound flyover, Chippendale Parkway, Woolridge Road, 288 to Old 100 extension, as well as projects that are being leveraged, like 360 and I-95 Route 10. So anyway, each of the jurisdictions have participated fully in sharing this information. So this is the best available thing we have based on current commitments. So we're looking at two different worlds here. The current commitments, which is similar to the allocations plan I reviewed initially. And then the last thing to share, as Ms. Clark mentioned earlier, is the wish list. We've referred to that as a candidate projects database. So what we want to do after we have an understanding, a solid understanding of the funding that CVTA has already committed, we need to know what the need is. So there are lots of other projects that you won't see in this summary table that are still in your capital improvement program or in the comprehensive plan or other types of wish lists locally. So we're working with TAC right now to understand what that financial burden will be that the CVTA should be considering as we move forward. So we have an understanding of the current commitments for the CVTA. Now we need to know what the need is. And knowing that delta between what CVTA has already contributed to each locality's project needs and the actual need outstanding, we'll be able to then make a better informed decision at the authority level on how to move forward with a financing plan. That's something the mayor has asked to have put together for this year, is kind of our financing program for how the CVTA looks to move forward in the future years. That could be a PAYGO model like we're currently doing. It could be bonding in a couple of different options. It could be a combination of the two. So knowing what that larger number is going to be in terms of our financial need to support all of the critical regional infrastructure projects is where we're headed. So we're looking forward to working with TAC initially over the next few months to identify that wish list, candidate projects, and then certainly bring that back to the finance committee as we talk about financing options and what the preference might be moving forward. So I think that covers my update under that item. I'd be happy to take any questions. I really flew through that quickly.
Do we have any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if you'd be so kind to indulge me in a comment. As Mr. Parsons was going over that, I was thinking about 1996 up to this period that we have now. I think at a previous meeting, I mentioned a word called tooting one's own horn. And as he was going over those numbers, as I was reflecting back, this is a significant thing that has happened to our region, that we could talk about numbers like this. We weren't able to do that 5 years ago, weren't able to do that. So I'm thinking that each commissioner again should be sensitive to, this is something to toot your horn about. Now, I would agree that the typical citizen doesn't understand the significance of that. That's our job, to get that message to that citizen. But this is awesome when you think about where we have come from and where we are. And so I just hope that each commissioner feels, or at least has a semblance of what we have done. And as most of you know, I'm leaving, but you want to please continue on this. This is awesome. I don't want to be too hyperbolic, but I almost want to pinch myself that when Mr. Parsons mentioned those numbers and where we were in 1996 and the other previous years, this is so good for the region. So, and this is another example where I can say for this August group, metaphorical flowers. We need to toot our own horn about this. This is very good for the region. Couldn't hold that in.
That's okay. Let it go.
Madam Chair, if I can respond. Mr. Thorne and everyone, I am more than willing to continue the practice that Mr. Carroll started and come provide updates at any supervisor's meeting or council meeting as we continue to move forward with this process. So that's what I'm here for, and I feel free to lean on me to do that.
All right.
Madam Chair, we did have one related, the requested action that we saw the amendment for at the beginning of the meeting. I would like to, as we move forward with this process, there is a lot of work to do. So there was a suggestion made to elicit the help of the Finance Directors Working Group. It's been called upon in the past to help with this process of moving forward with understanding financing options and needs and how to best equip the region to make these decisions. So the requested action, as I mentioned, is in the agenda. I'd be happy to read it again if that will be helpful to the members.
Okay.
So that we can.
Chair, I make a motion to approve as we amended it in the beginning of the meeting.
All right. You heard the motion, and we have a second.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposition? So moved.
Thank you.
Number 2 is the CVTA credit assessment overview.
Did everyone get a copy of the handout that was out? Outside? Okay. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to lead into this discussion. This is an effort that we have talked about at multiple committee meetings as well as the full authority. We are entering into a process where PFM, Christy Choi is here with us today, is assisting the authority in getting a confidential ratings assessment from Moody's. And we are moving through that process. I've been working with the chair, Chair Stoney, as Christy has helped us set up that meeting, and the assessment is taking place later this calendar year. So we are moving through that process. What we have today is a kind of an overview for the Finance Committee that Ms. Choi is going to share about how that process is moving forward. And the kinds of things that are included in that, basically for your information. So we have the handout, and with that, Ms. Choi,
Yeah.
feel free to take it away.
Happy to. Good morning. So the material that you have in front of you, this is the material that PFM would create to help our clients go through their upcoming rating discussions with the analysts. And it really aims at providing information that each agency looks at to assign and provide credit ratings and other relevant background information. So I walked through a much more detailed version of this with Ted several weeks ago, but at his request, I'm providing an executive summary of what we talked about. So a couple of slides on slide 2 and 3 are background information that I'm sure most of you are already well aware of. So credit rating is assigned by Moody's, S&P, and Fitch. There's a relatively new entrant in this market. They're called Kroll, so they exist as well. So you have 3 or 4 agencies that you can request credit ratings from. And you can see that in the table. You've got in the green investment grade ratings that range from AAA to BBB. And then in red that are non-investment grade that are lower in credit quality that range from BB to C. Most state and local governments are in the investment grade rating category, and most of the member jurisdictions of CVTA are actually at the very high end of that investment grade ratings. And so why do issuers care about this is since when you have a credit rating, it usually represents the level of risk that a bondholder is bearing for the repayment of the bonds. And so lower the risk, the lower the rate. So typically you can see a correlation of a higher credit rating yielding a lower borrowing rate. So that is why we care about credit ratings in general. And then on page 3, we've got other signals that rating agencies use beyond just the rating itself. That's called modifiers, outlooks, and watches. And each agency uses what's called an outlook. It can be a positive or a negative, and a watch. The difference between an outlook and a watch is the amount of time that it may take for them to resolve the issue or reflect a change in the credit rating. So normally, a positive outlook is resolved anywhere from 12 to 18 months, and a positive watch is resolved anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So it just reflects the amount of time that it might take to resolve whatever it is that the rating agencies have pinpointed as an issue. And most of you, I know, I'm sure are aware that the federal government of the US is currently on negative outlook by Moody's. That was just announced over the weekend. So that is currently pending out there. So on slide 4, I have highlighted in blue where I think where the CVTA's targeted ratings are. Given the criteria and all the analysis that we have reviewed, I think the CVTA's inaugural ratings will be solidly in the AA category, which is very, very pristine, particularly for a credit that will be issuing sales tax revenue bonds, which is what we'll be doing. So very strong, and I'll show you the details behind how we arrived at the conclusion in a moment. So delving into the credit methodology itself on slide 5, each rating agency have its own criteria, and they're a little bit different, but largely the same as well. So Moody's and S&P use what's called a scorecard approach, and it is very formulaic. It has weights. You put in input, and it spits out an indicated rating. So there's their rating methodology is formula driven, whereas Fitch has a more qualitative approach. So this was part of what we thought through in determining which rating agency to go to first. And the reason why we arrived at Moody was in part because they have such transparent scorecard approach where I think we'd be able to pinpoint where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are, and I think they're gonna be able to provide more in-depth of a feedback for us and really for the authority to use that as guiding information heading into the debt issuance process when that occurs. So on slide 6, we describe what the common credit factors are, and you can see there's 6 boxes here. I would say that the most 2 boxes in this page would be coverage and the breadth and concentration of tax base. So, while there are these, 6 important factors, I think when it comes to sales tax revenue bonds, the agencies focus a lot on the coverage, seeing how strong the revenues are in comparison to amount of the debt obligations, as well as the regional economy. So on slide 7, as I mentioned earlier, I expect that the authority should be in the AA category. And I've highlighted a few things that we're going to really highlight in our rating presentation that is currently underway in drafting. Is one, that the regional economy is very diverse and the taxable base is strong. That is key to generating sales tax revenues, and I think that that is a particular strength of where we are, so we should definitely hone into that. The second one is, there's CVTA is not the only one in the region who is who's doing the regional transportation planning. There's NVTAs, there's HR TAC, and what I found in all of those examples and seeing how the rating agencies think about it is that they do care a lot about the governance and the management approach, that it is in fact a regional collaborative effort, and that transportation planning is given a lot of thought. So we're going to try to emphasize that in the presentation as well. And since our bonds are going to be secured with sales tax revenues, it will be important to illustrate that revenue stream has been a resilient one over the years, both up and down economic cycles, which I think is another advantage to the pledge that we have here, because we have multiple jurisdictions contributing to that sales tax revenue. If one jurisdiction had a softer year, I think that there's benefit, and I've actually seen this in reviewing the historic sales tax revenue data, that that is oftentimes offset by a strength in another jurisdiction. So I think naturally we have some diversity in our revenue stream. And then lastly, that this authority is careful and prudent in its financial management, and that is evidenced by most of the member jurisdictions' very high credit ratings. So delving into slide 8 with the details of the Moody's scorecard and how they split out the weights, this is what I mean by, it is helpful to see all of the weights broken out by individual sub-factors. So all the way to the left, you've got the major factors. There's taxable base and pledge, 30%, legal, 30%, financial metrics is the heaviest weight at 40%. And then it breaks down further to sub-factor categories, which individually have a sub-factor weighting that all sums up to 100%. So when it is all said and done, it is calculating a weighted numerical value, and then you add that all up, and the scorecards that both Moody's and S&P uses, it's like golf, so lower score is higher credit rating. So our indicative score maps out to a 270 preliminarily, which this is, all the agencies will very much emphasize that the indicative score is not the end all be all, that there are all qualitative adjustments that they can make to the credit to either notch the credit up or down. But without any of those qualitative factors, we are at a numerical value of 270 preliminarily, which maps out solidly in that AA category. And then while we're not talking to S&P right away, we did go ahead and look at that scorecard as well on slide 9. They have the three factor rating factor categories. economic fundamentals, coverage and liquidity, and revenue volatility. And again, coverage has the highest weight. And when it is all said and done, that weighted score comes up to be a 1.55 that preliminarily maps out at a AA+ category from S&P. And I didn't include a slide on Fitch. We did look at that criteria as well, and I think that it all shows similar story, but as I mentioned, they don't have a scorecard approach, so it's not as transparent. The other thing is Fitch currently is out there with a new criteria asking the market to comment on a new criteria, and the sales tax revenue bond credit criteria is embedded in that. So they're undergoing a process to adopt a set of new criteria that will be in place before CVTA is in the market and before we're ready to talk to Fitch most likely. So I'll be happy to come back to this body and the board if, as appropriate to talk more about Fitch if that's the direction that we're headed. So on slide 10, just recapping, the confidential indicative rating from Moody's is coming at a cost of $55,000, but they're giving a rebate against a fee if we do choose at some point down the road to pursue a public rating to enter the bond market. And then this process also allows us to present up to 3 scenarios, which we'll be taking full advantage of. So we'll be sharing with Moody's some different coverage levels to see if, you know, a higher coverage metric would result in a stronger credit rating. So I think that was part of what this body was interested in seeing. So we'll be getting that input as well. And it'll also give us an opportunity to have a dialogue to say things like, okay, if we have a lower coverage and a higher reserve, is that a different outcome than a higher coverage and a lower reserve? Like that will just give us some levers to pull, and with that feedback when it comes time to actually craft the plan of finance when we're entering the market. And then when it's all said and done, towards the end of this calendar year, we will get a written letter from Moody's describing, you know, what our request was, the scenarios they evaluated, and a credit rating associated with each of the scenario that they have reviewed. And that will also outline our credit strengths, credit challenges, and it'll just give us a good guiding tools to get the process jump started. So with that, we did have, it seems like the printed copy doesn't have that, but I can certainly follow up. There's some appendix information that has more details on the assessment and the data in and itself. So if you'd like to take a look at that, we'd be happy to send that to you. Sure.
Please.
Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, just a quick question on the economic portion of this. When we make a presentation to them, what economic indicator information are we actually presenting to them? You know, for example, besides the fact that Richmond is the fastest growing region right now in the state, in the metro area, from a population standpoint, then we look at some of the other economic drivers that we have going on, for instance, sports tourism in Ranco, sports tourism in Chesterfield, Richmond, and even looking at the Capital Region Airport, looking at, and now we have record employments this year of 3 months in a row where we have the highest totals of travel. And so there's a lot of strong economic indicators, and I'm just curious what is actually presented in the process when we're doing it besides what the sales numbers are.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So for Moody's and S&P, within their criteria, they will specify this is the metric that they will use as the basis of the formula to derive. So in the Moody's case, they look at per capita income and median household income. So those are the 2 criteria specific information that we always include. And so for those, and this is in the details that will follow up, but we have looked at all of the member jurisdictions, you know, income levels, and done a weighted average of those, and you know that's what they care about, and that's what's embedded in the criteria. However, I think there's always it's always good to supplement that with other relevant information. So the other data points that we included were unemployment rates. As you mentioned, we also included the AV growth, and we sort of compiled all the member jurisdictions' assessed valuation and show that growth over time, I think over the past decade, which came out really solid. We show that. We also have a chart that includes the diversity of the employment base in the region that shows that it is a very colorful pie chart, that we have, all sorts of, it's not concentrated, there's a lot of diversity, it's resilient. We also included some information regarding some sales tax centers. And I think actually there are some things that you mentioned that is not on there that we should take a look, like the airport and the others, but we do attempt to also show some key retail centers in the region, as well as the other data that I've mentioned. Oh, we also included some metrics regarding population growth and projected population. So I think those are, while they're not, directly in the criteria, I think it's, since, our preliminary economic fundamentals come out from Moody's at a single A, I thought that it would be good to supplement that with all that information to say, okay, there's the criteria-driven income metric, but here's all the other information that you should take into consideration.
Okay. Good information. I mean, I think, Madam Chair, based on what you said, the basic criterion that you're gonna submit on what the income level is, that's actually what's driving everything else. It's driving the fact that people are now traveling more. We have more people flying in and out of Richmond International Airport than we ever had before. And more economic growth with jobs between, different companies coming in, Amazon and Lego and others. And so I really think that our region of the state is probably the strongest right now. And so I look forward to seeing how this turns out.
Okay. Any more questions or comments?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we will have, okay. Now we're gonna go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter. So,
There's a suggested motion here, if you want to invite someone to offer that motion, that'd be
okay.
great.
And so the motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Virginia Freedom of Information Act, Section 2-2.2-3711A29 for the purpose of discussing the award of a contract involving the expenditure of public fund and discussions of the terms of scope of such contract for special bond for the CVTA, where discussion is in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position, negotiating strategy of the public body, in which requires discussion, consultation with legal counsel pursuant to Section 2-2-3711A8, during which all recording of the meeting will cease.
So move.
Second,
Second.
all in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
opposition? Okay.